Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker was directed by J.J. Abrams and is supposedly the final movie of the Skywalker saga. That means episodes 1 through 9, and it's the conclusion of that. The plot follows the events after The Last Jedi, where the rest of the Resistance is up against the strong and powerful First Order. Also, Palpatine is in this movie. So The Rise of Skywalker is a film that I have been heavily anticipating ever since I saw Star Wars The Force Awakens back in 2015. And now we are here, the end of the Skywalker saga. I just finished up reviewing every single Star Wars movie ever made over the past week and a half. I reviewed episodes 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, and have rewatched every single movie in the episodic saga. And now that I have rewatched everything and have been given the chance to go deep into those movies with my reviews, I have a clear vision of how I feel about every single movie now. And the only one that is still blurred for me is The Last Jedi. I still don't know how I feel about that movie. And maybe it's the same case for The Rise of Skywalker. This is the final movie in the Skywalker saga. My expectations were through the roof. I was so excited to see this movie. But unfortunately, like the last two movies, this movie did not quite reach my expectations. But what's even worse is I feel like this movie is my least favorite of the three we were given from Disney and Lucasfilm ever since Disney bought Lucasfilm. Obviously, for those who have not seen the movie yet, I'm not going to spoil anything. This is a really difficult movie to talk about, though, in depth without spoiling much, so I'm not going to really talk in depth at all about The Rise of Skywalker. I will only go surface level with my points about The Rise of Skywalker, nothing deeper than that. But what did I like about this movie? Why is this movie alright at best? Well, the first two-thirds I did not have much of a problem with. In fact, this movie is very fast-paced, just like the first and second movie of this trilogy. It's not like in episode 1 where half of the movie is just about politics and you want to sleep the entire time. This movie has a plethora of exciting action sequences and good character moments to make you invested in the story and to keep your eyes glued to the screen. There are never any dull moments in The Rise of Skywalker, exactly like in The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. And those action sequences are led with great-looking CGI and practical sets, which, of course, I'm always going to love. This movie looks fantastic, as do the last two. It's a beautiful looking movie, and I would not want it looking any different. Some surprises do come about in The Rise of Skywalker, just like they did in The Last Jedi, which did catch me by surprise. It made me gasp here and there, which I always am a fan of. If you can take me by surprise during a movie, then I will always be for that. I love surprises. Some of those surprises do give us much anticipated answers. Holy crap, it took 4 years just to answer a couple simple questions. Thank you, J.J. Abrams, for finally giving us some answers. It took you long enough. You know who my favorite character in The Rise of Skywalker is, though? We do get a couple of new characters. We have all of the old characters back from the last two movies, with a few sprinkled in from the original trilogy, like Lando Calrissian, who was nice to see back in this film. But my favorite character in this movie, believe it or not, is C-3PO. This is probably the best C-3PO we've ever been given. In every single scene, he steals the show. He is so funny, exactly how C-3PO was like in the original trilogy. He's never been like this in a movie before. This is absolutely the movie where C-3PO shines, and I'm so glad they gave him the spotlight in The Rise of Skywalker, as funny as that sounds. The biggest talking point by far, though, with The Rise of Skywalker is the return of Palpatine, Darth Sidious. And how did I feel about Darth Sidious in this movie? I will say one thing. There was some nostalgia with his character being back in this movie. Whether or not it was a good choice to bring him back, there was some nostalgia, which is always a good thing. I love nostalgia. I love Star Wars. Seeing old characters back in new movies is always something I welcome, and it was so nice to see Ian McDiarmid reprise his role as Darth Sidious in this movie. He killed it once again as this character, as do pretty much everybody in this film. There is not a single bad performance. Everyone, again, is on their A game, and I did loved pretty much every performance. Everyone was good. But here we go. My positives start going downhill once we get to the finale, and then they started piling up those negatives. This finale, geez, man, all they needed to do was stick the landing, and they did not, in my opinion. The first 2/3 of this movie, like I said, I accepted them. They were fine for what they were, and it was a nice transition from The Last Jedi into the beginning 2/3 of this film. But when we got to this finale, oh, man, what happened here? I'm not going to spoil anything, but this movie acts like it's so epic, and it should be really epic. This is the last movie of the Skywalker saga, what made us love Star Wars to begin with. But by no stretch of the imagination is this movie epic at all. In fact, you really, really have to suspend your belief in order to buy into this finale. That's how ridiculous this movie gets towards the final act. All I wanted was an epic finale that made sense, was coherent, was unpredictable, and made me feel extremely emotionally invested. But that was never the case. I sat there with my arm and hand like this the entire time during this finale, bored out of my mind. I did not care about a single thing because I knew what was going to happen in this finale. It was predictable. You saw it coming from a mile away, and that's one of my biggest gripes of this movie. Not only is the finale not epic, but the movie turned out to be extremely predictable, which, looking at The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, those movies weren't that predictable. I didn't see certain things coming towards the end in those finales, but for this movie, it was the complete opposite. I saw every single beat coming. I'm not even gonna lie, I'm looking at my computer right now with all my notes, and there is so much here that I have written down. I may as well just start reading them all off because there's a ton to talk about here. Let's see. Oh yeah, this movie invalidates the ending of episode 6 because you have Palpatine in that movie. He dies. He's blown to smithereens, as I said in my review. But in this movie, he's magically back. I'm not going to spoil how he's back, but he's back. And that just completely takes away from the ending of episode 6. Now episode 6 is not as meaningful for myself anymore, which sucks. Not only does it do that for episode 6, but it contradicts The Last Jedi. There are certain things that happen in The Last Jedi, and in this movie, it's all thrown out the window. We don't care about that anymore. Let's move on more with a different plot and completely ignore anything that was built in The Last Jedi. That was another thing that really irritated me in this movie. Even if The Last Jedi was not a perfect movie, which by no means was The Last Jedi a perfect movie, at least bring back some of those plot points and expand on them to make this a coherent movie. Instead, this movie is all over the place and does not feel like it's at all a sequel of The Last Jedi. Going back to the notes here, let's see. Not everything was answered in this movie. I did say there were some answers. Yes, there were some answers in The Rise of Skywalker, but certain things never were brought up again. They happened in The Force Awakens, they happened in The Last Jedi, but they're never explained throughout this entire trilogy. And also, I will say it's not just this movie's fault. That is a fault of the other two movies in this trilogy too. They didn't provide any answers. They didn't utilize certain things that they should have utilized in those trilogies. No. So it's not just this movie's fault. It's also those films' fault too. Regardless, there are no excuses there. Some characters that were in the other movies are barely in this movie when they were bigger characters in those films. And even some of the coolest characters that were never tapped on in the other films, they bring them into this movie and it's like, wait a minute. Why did you wait so long to bring them into this film and you barely even have them in the movie? I'm not going to say who it is or what they're doing in the movie, but there are some characters in this movie I'm like, holy crap, you could have had such great potential with these characters and they're rushed into the film and they don't do anything in the film. They were in this universe for no reason, practically. But by far, one of my biggest problems with The Rise of Skywalker is how they promised this movie would tie the knot with all three trilogies. It would bring them all together and be a perfect conclusion to the Skywalker saga and all 9 episode films. But nope. This movie did not do that, in my opinion. Others might look at it differently with the inclusion of Palpatine, but you gotta give me more than that, man. You have opportunities to bring it all together, and you choose not to. Why would you not bring together the whole 9 films. But you know what they do instead with this movie in the finale? Instead of making it this epic conclusion of huge proportions and tying all 3 trilogies together, no, they decide, instead of going that route, to make this movie's ending copy off of another film's ending that came out earlier this year. And it was the corniest thing I've seen in such a long time. I don't know why or how this ended up in the final cut of the movie, but what were they thinking with the last few moments of this film? At the end of the day, guys, I'm just a disappointed Star Wars fan. This new trilogy began with a solid entry, and then we got a decent sequel, and now this final movie gave us one of the most anticlimactic endings I've ever seen, especially for a series that is building up to so much over the last couple of years. I look at this trilogy as a mess. I don't understand why there wasn't just one director behind the camera for all 3 movies so that there was no contradictions. The whole series would have been coherent in this trilogy. It just felt like directors' tug-of-war at the end of the day. And they should have just had one person direct all 3 movies. I don't understand why they didn't. Again, The Rise of Skywalker, this movie is not bad. It's just okay at best. It's nothing more than that. The other movies in this trilogy, I'm not saying they're much better. This trilogy as a whole I found to be pretty disappointing from where we started to where we finished. It could have been so much more than it was, but unfortunately, it never got to that point, and it never hit its ceiling. I do want to see this movie once more so I can make my mind with how I feel about it, but for right now, I will be generous. I'm giving Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker a 62%. Nothing more, nothing less. This movie was disappointing. It could have been a lot more than it was, which really sucks. I wish J.J. Abrams was the director for all 3 movies, and maybe it would have been a different case, but it was just so anticlimactic and predictable. It should not have gone this way, and that's how we ended up, which, I need to see this movie again. That's all I have to say right now. Alright, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Have you guys seen it? If so, be sure to let me know down below in the comment section what your thoughts are of it. We'll see if this movie gets any better for myself upon second viewing, but for right now, I think it's my least favorite of this trilogy, and definitely in the bottom 3 to 4 movies of this entire Skywalker saga, which stinks. It should have been in the top 3, I think. But anyway, if you're new to my channel, click the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.